Hello, my name is Donald Bear, and my colleagues and I are going to share for 30 minutes the idea of advancing, emergent, and beginning readers' development um, for the California Reading Association, and we're honored to be involved. So these are my colleagues and students, Darrell Kiernan and Sarah Negrete, who are both working in the regional professional development in northeastern Nevada. So these are our topics for today, and I'm going to do some introduction on early literacy, and I'm going to move fairly quickly so we can get to the activities. Um, and I'll be sharing activities as we go, but we also want to look at what a personal reader is and the key ingredients for emergent and beginning literacy, or some key ingredients. And then we'll examine, as we go, phonics, word knowledge, and fluency. So these are the five stages, and we're going to be most interested, only looking at rather, the emergent and beginning stage to about the middle of beginning reading. And you can see the stage of spelling there, the emergent stage, and the letter name stage. And this is a table from the article below that was published this year in Reading Teacher, and you can just access it at that website. And you can see that we're looking on the top line from early emergent to the middle beginning reading. I'm going to talk a lot about the levels of concept of word, Daryl Morris's important work. I like this table because you can look across reading behaviors. So, in this example, if you see someone who is a late emergent reader, we would expect with repeated readings for them to pick up a couple of sight words, whereas the child later on will pick up four to plus sight words. And we'll show you examples of this. I'm just sort of doing an introduction, and this is Marcia Invernizzi's thinking, what she calls the literacy diet for the emergent stage. And I'm going to concentrate mostly on 2 through 6, and particularly at the bottom, number 6, concept of word in text, or what we call a cow. But let me start with oral language. We have to know more about children's oral language, and all of our word study lessons begin with literature and books and meaning, and we understand students' language development and experiences as literacy instructors. We know, did they have a delay, for example? Are they multilingual learners? What nice capacities do they bring from their first languages? And we need to listen carefully to students in these various language systems. I am moving fast, and I'll be glad to talk about this at another time. But these days I'm looking for at emergent learners with the rhythm and the phrases in uh, speaking. We aren't born knowing what a word is. So we talk in phrases, breath groups, speech envelopes. And in our teaching, I think with 3.5-year-olds, we can be more mindful of their development in these areas. As a literacy person at the reading centers, I often think about oral language development. I look at primary learning difficulties in a few students who may have experienced learning difficulties that are brain related. And then we're also looking at multilingual learners. So, primary reading difficulties may share uh, a processing dysfunction at the phrasal level. And some children with primary reading difficulties uh, have difficulty with rhythm perception and musical beat. But these are just a few students, and you can look at Goswami's and Bide and Power's work. And I write about it in the article I was mentioning. So let's move on from oral language where we started and look at the more traditionally at the phonological awareness. And so it is a progression of perceiving smaller and smaller parts of spoken words. So we have rhymes and syllables, onset and rhyme, individual phonemes. That's sort of a progression you can think about in your student. students. And so this is a picture sort that our students will pursue. They need to know the names of the pictures and sort them by beginning sounds. So I would like to say that rhythm and phrasal work is a precursor to syllabic segmentation. And 3.5-year-olds, I'm going to move quickly. I've probably talked enough about this, but the rhythm awareness may help students with syllabic segmentation. I think of it as moving up the language stream to the phrasal and rhythmic level. And so we want to have these sorts of activities, as you see here, and which my colleagues will demonstrate just as soon as I'm done. But these are the activities that good kindergarten and pre-K teachers have always presented. So let's look at concept of word and text, uh, and with more deliberation here. So there are three levels of cow. And without a cow, a child will not be able to learn sight words with any ease and phonics with any ease. So that's why it is so important. My teacher at Henderson called it the miracle of reading, three levels. And the important work of Daryl Morris is here for you to pursue. And Mesmer and her team have looked at concept of word and syllable awareness in a powerful way in that bottom reference. You'll also see it. Good teachers have known about Cal forever, and you can see it in To Kill a Mockingbird. I could not remember when the lines above Atticus's move and fender separated into words. That's concept of word in text. So the first level is developing Cal. They're developing awareness of words in print. These are emergent learners, early emergent. They're developing directionality. It may be a sweeping gesture according to the direction of their text. They point to the using the rhythm and the beat or the stress. So here's Ms. Bussey doing 1, 2, buckle my shoe. The children learn the rhyme and ditty. And this child is pointing. And this video is on my website. And there are 6 or 5 other similar videos at developmental levels. But Danielle is 2 weeks away from having a cow. And when she says buckle, pointing to buckle, she's saying buckle my. 1, 2, buckle my. And it throws her off. Thank goodness those numbers are there because that keeps her on track. And you'll also see Ms. Bussey asking, find the word buckle. And now she does find buckle up there top at the top. And she does know some sight words and beginning sounds. And she's, like I said, only a couple of weeks from having a rudimentary concept of word. And you'll see her read the second line and reread the ditty. My personal reader is what children have. 1, 2, buckle my shoe would go in there, and you'll see that in a moment. And so here's personal reader. Here's a child with chart paper following along, trying to acquire a concept of word. The second level is the rudimentary, and they can point accurately. They do learn a few sight words with repeated reading. They're aware of syllables, they self correct, and so when they are thrown off, they go back to the beginning of the phrase for a running start. And they can apply letter sound knowledge. You can see that in their writing and in their phonics activities. So here's a child reading in her personal reader, 1, 2, buckle my shoe. And you can put any material that you're using in your program, in your core program, as well as rhymes and ditties. Roses are red, starlight, star bright. And this is independent work the children are doing, but they may also read to each other. We also like bilingual readers, like this one from Ms. Nielsen's class. El Raton. I wonder where that rat is. And we have rhymes and ditties. Larry Hellman has done important work in this area. And we have picture sorts that go perfectly with Five Little Ducks, let's say. And this would be in their personal reader. And here's Regina Smith with her kindergartners having them track 5 lines from a story that she read with the students. Now, the last level is a firm cow. These children are early beginning readers. They point accurately, at least, and they are. When you ask them to find a word, they in the middle, they can do so immediately for most of the time. Sam, 1, 2, buckle my shoe. I may ask them to find buckle, point to the word buckle, and they can do so immediately. They learn sight words with just a few or several rereadings, and their texts become longer, 6 to 12 lines. These reading behaviors, as you know of beginning readers, they usually read aloud to themselves. They're word by word readers. They often use a finger to point as they read, and they reread familiar texts and texts that have similar language and words. We may do a rhyme like crackers and crumbs. We have a personal reader book, and the personal reader is a place to store materials. And my colleagues will be sharing this with you. It could be crackers and crumbs. You could do caps for sale, as we've done here. And every time Sarah reread it, she put a little tick mark, like my joke is a base 4 counting system. And that's a pretty long text, as you can see. And here's a small group of 3 kids rereading their selection from their personal readers, and they're reading it together. So let me stop here. My colleagues will pick up and share an abundance of further activities. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Donald. I'm Darrell Kiernan, and in this next portion of our session, we are going to show you more specifically what it looks like to move from the emergent stage into the beginning reader stage and really highlight the differences there. We hope the examples we share will help you think about your own students and their reading instruction and how you can support them in their swift movement through the developmental stages of literacy. In this example photo, students in the class had practiced reciting and acting out the rhyme 1, 2, buckle my shoe. Students at the late emergent stage are working to solidify their concept of word in text. And as Donald mentioned, will frequently get off track reading a 2-syllable word in the middle of a line of text. Notice the teacher prepared only the first line of the rhyme in large font, intentionally placed extra spaces between the words, and included a picture to support her group of emergent readers in tracking the line of print. The teacher asked the students to finger point to the words as they read and personalized the learning by asking them to circle known letters after reading. The teacher then recorded the letters at the bottom of the page and wrote each letter on a separate card. The student was very proud of his growing letter bank. If asked at the late emergent stage to find a word, it is likely that a student will choose the first word, the last word, or a prominent word. In this example, a prominent word would be buckle. We know that the late emergent reader will know between 5 and 15 letters, yet this reader is already in text. We don't wait until all the letters are known before reading. Even an early beginning reader may not know every letter quickly on sight, yet they should be reading text while learning. One of the hallmarks of moving into the beginning reader stage is that students will point accurately or recognize when they are thrown off and self-correct. Notice that once a student is in the early beginning stage, we transition to more text per page. The text might include a longer poem or rhyme, or a few sentences from a language experience that the student can reread. The picture on the right shows how you would prepare the whole rhyme for an early beginning reader to reread, in contrast to only the first line for an emergent reader. At the early beginning stage, when the teacher asks a student to find a word, they won't likely immediately jump to the word. They may have to take a running start, meaning that if the teacher asks, "Can you point to the word shut?" the student will go back to the start of the text and read 1, 2, buckle my shoe, 3, 4, shut. Oh, shut is right there. As students reread in their personal reader, the teacher asks them to choose words that they know. Words are then written by the teacher on small cards. The words become part of the student's word bank, words that are automatically known by each student. They get to choose the words from their reading. At first, students may collect only a few words per week, but as they move toward the middle of the beginning stage of reading, they will begin to collect several words a day, and they are motivated to see their growing sight word vocabulary. It is important that students review the words frequently in order to really secure them in memory, and so that they can be used for focused sound contrasts in word study. Here you see the poem Soup, Soup that an early beginning reader has reread several times. He collected 4 words for his word bank that are recorded at the bottom of the page: want, lot, eat, and soup. In word study, this early beginning reader is learning about short vowels in word families and has sorted the words into 3 categories: OP, OG, and OT. And then the teacher asked the student to review his word bank words to find any examples that could be added to the sort. The student was thrilled to find the word lot. This is one example of how you can meaningfully connect students' in-text reading and their word study. With that, I am going to turn it over to Sarah to share with you some specific planning suggestions.
Thank you, Darl. My name is Sarah Negrete, and I'm going to take just a few minutes to discuss the routine of using a personal reader in the classroom. As in any classroom, managing the routine is part of the preparation so that the learning activity goes smoothly. Prior to launching personal readers in your classroom, you're going to want to prepare the materials so that each student has a personal reader in their possession. In order to do so, you will want to gather many 3x5 index cards cut into 4s. You'll want a folder with 3 holes or a binder for each student. You will want to gather a copy of a rhyme or a poem or a ditty that students already know. And you'll want an alphabet for the folder or binder as a tool for you and a resource for the students. And finally, you'll want a baggie or an envelope to collect word bank cards. You can add to the personal reader from here. They don't have to be done or perfect to get started. It's important that the students know the reading material that goes into their personal readers by heart. Therefore, on the first day of your routine, you will want to introduce the reading material to the whole class or a small group of students. You'll do that like usual, playing with the text as you normally would, reading it together several times, pointing to certain letters and words, etc. The reading material you choose might be a rhyme or a poem or a ditty, or even a collection of student dictation about a learning experience they've shared. And remember that the whole class can learn the entire poem, and the personal readers can be differentiated for students by including more or less of the whole text. The introduced material should be ready and in their personal reader so that after the introduction, each student can take their personal readers to read and reread selections. This can be done independently, with partners, small groups, and at home. Although you might want to consider just sending a piece of paper with that particular poem or ditty home with the students so that you can keep the entire personal reader in the classroom. On days 2 and 3 of the personal reader routine, students can continue to read and reread selections in the personal reader. Again, this can be done independently, with a partner, or in small groups. This is also a time where you can and should work with small groups of students practicing their latest word study work and word bank words, while also emphasizing authentic text as well. On day 4, you will want to consider introducing another piece of text for the students to learn. so that you can continue to add to the personal reader fairly frequently. It's really important that the personal readers do not become stagnant, and frequently adding to them can keep this from happening, while also accelerating students' learning and exposure to words and authentic text. And from there, the process of the personal reader itself just continues to repeat over and over, where you're adding additional material. They are allowed to read and reread selections. They continue to harvest words for the word bank and continue to accelerate their word study. Personal readers are an ideal way and a perfect format to provide reading material where every reader feels successful. And that alone can accelerate their learning developmentally and appropriately. Before we sign off today, we want to share with you a few additional resources. We highlighted several key points today about emergent and beginning readers, especially using the personal reader as a tool. So please download Donald Baer's latest article with Reading Teacher from May 2022 for even more content on this. The article is available to everyone, whether or not you are an ILA member or not. And finally, we want to thank you for participating in this webinar. Feel free to reach out to any one of us for additional information or questions.